Good morning. Today we're going to start talking about factoring polynomials. Factoring polynomials takes a polynomial and puts it back into a product form. Okay, so you're going to take a polynomial and put it back into product form. Okay, so let's think about this. Here's just an example. What we've learned so far is if we have something that looks like this, okay, what do? We distribute, right? So we would say 4 times 2x. So 4 times 2x would be an 8x, and 4 times a negative 3 would be a 12, okay? So right now what we're doing is we're going to have something, we're going to start out with the 8x minus 12, and we want to turn this polynomial, back into what we started with here, okay? So we're going to know this right here, this 8x minus 12, and we're going to turn it back into the multiplication. So factoring a polynomial means that we are going to have something multiplied together. So like, remember this, we'll have x minus 2 times x plus 3. If we were going to simplify this, remember we'd multiply. Everything in the first one gets multiplied by everything in the second one. So we would say x times x plus 3 minus 2 times x plus 3. So x squared plus a 3x minus a 2x minus a 6. So x squared, plus an x minus a 6. Okay, so now we're going to start with the polynomial. So we would start with the x squared plus x minus 6, and we would figure out what two or more things that multiply together to give me that. So we're going to learn how to put it back, how to take a polynomial and put it in a form that has multiplication in a product. Okay? Okay. Some polynomials cannot be factored, so these are called prime. Okay? Alright, so we've got to learn a lot of things to factoring. We're going to learn a lot of steps. There's 4 things that we're going to learn. Okay, so we're going to learn how to factor. Okay, the first thing that we're always going to look for is a greatest common factor. Okay, Then we're going to look at how many terms we have. Okay, so how many terms? If you have two terms, we're going to learn how to factor a two-term polynomial. If we have three terms, remember what's a three-term called? Two terms is, remember, called a binomial. Three terms, remember, is called a trinomial. Oops, I can't count here today. And then we're going to talk about if we have a four-term polynomial. Okay, remember that one's not special. So today what we're going to talk about is the greatest common factor. Okay, so that's our first step, is talking about our greatest common factor. We shorten this to GCF. So, to find our greatest common factor, the first thing is that we're going to look at the coefficients. So, look at coefficients. Okay, and find a number that is in common. In all terms of the polynomial. Okay, then we're going to look at the variable. Okay, and then we're going to find a variable. It must be present in every single one of the terms. Okay, so if there is a variable common, it's going to be the variable with the smallest exponent. Okay, if a variable is in common in all of them, okay, you're going to take smallest exponent. Okay, so then you found your GCF. So you're going to divide every term by the GCF. Okay, so when you divide each term by the GCF, you're going to put the GCF outside the parentheses. So put GCF outside the parentheses. And the remainder on the inside. Okay? Okay. So let's work some examples. Alright, so we'll put this one. So 4x plus a 12. So 4x plus a 12, the common thing that they have in common, we have a 4. 4 goes both into 4 and 12. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, okay, is I'm dividing both of my terms by 4. And I'm going to put 4 on the outside of my parentheses. So now I'm going to divide each term by 4. So what am I going to have left? So I'm going to have 4x divided by 4, which just gives me an x. And I'm going to have 12 divided by 4, which gives me a 30. So here is my greatest common factor. Okay, I turned a polynomial into a factored form, into multiplication. You always can check yourself. I should put that up there. So check by multiplying out. Okay, so 4 times x plus 3. To multiply this, we would say 4 times x, which gives me a 4x, and then 4 times 3, which gives me a 12. And that's correct. Okay? Alright, so let's look at this one. 8x minus an 8. So my factor there, the number that goes into both is an 8. Okay, so I'm going to write the 8 on the outside, and I'm going to divide each term by an 8. So 8x over 8 is just an x, and 8 over 8 is just a 1. So my factored form is going to be 8 times x minus 1. To check that, remember we multiply. So 8 times x gives me an 8x, and 8 times negative 1 gives me a negative 8. Okay, so let's do this one here. So we've got a 5x squared minus a 25. So the number that goes into both of those two terms is going to be a 5. Okay, I have an x squared and an x, so those variables are the same. So my smallest one is going to be an x. So that would be my greatest common factor. So that means I'm going to take each term and divide it by 5x. So 5 divided by 5 is just a 1, and x squared over x is an x. 25 over 5 is a 5, and x over x is a 1. We factor. Okay, we got multiplication there. So now, remember it has to multiply back to give you what you started with. So 5x times x gives you a 5x squared. 5x times a negative 5 is a negative 25x. Okay. All right, let's look here. So we've got 24xy minus a 3x. All right. So the number they have in common is a 3, and the variable that they have in common is a x. So I'm going to divide each term by 3x. 3 goes into 24. How many times? 8. X over x, so we're going to be left with an 8y. And 3x over 3x is a 1. So we now have it in multiplication form. So we multiply out just to check. So 3 times 8 gives you 24. And x times y is just an xy. And 3x times a negative 1 is a negative 3x. So that gives me what I started with. Okay? Alright, what about this one? X squared minus a 2x. So they don't have a number in common. The only thing that they have is a variable. They have an x. They have a variable x in common. Okay? So we can factor out an x. So that means I'm going to divide each term by an x. X squared over x leaves me with an x. And then 2x over x leaves me with a 2. If you multiply this out, x times x gives you a x squared. X times negative 2 gives you negative 2x. Okay? Okay, so let's look here. So I've got 6x to the 4th plus 12x cubed minus a 10x squared. So the number that's in common in each one of these for a 6, a 12, and a 10, a number that's in common in both of all of those, is going to be a 2. Okay? Because 2 times 3 gives you a 6. 2 times 6 gives you a 12, and 2 times 5 gives you a 10. So the number in common there is going to be a 2. Okay? And then for your variables, here there's an x in common in all of those. So the smallest exponent here is going to be that x squared. Okay? So I'm going to erase this here because now remember we divide each term by the greatest common factor, 2x squared. Okay, so 6 divided by 2 gives you a 3. X to the 4th divided by x squared will give you an x squared. 12 divided by 2 gives you a 6. X cubed over x squared leaves you with an x. 10 divided by 2 is a 5, and x squared over x squared will be x to the 0. And remember, it has to be the greatest thing that has in common. If you would have just said 2, that is not the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor has to be that 2 with that x squared. Okay? If you multiply this out, 2 times 3 gives you a 6. X squared times x squared gives you an x to the 4th. 2 times 6 gives you 12. X squared times x gives you x cubed. And 2 times negative 5 is a negative 10 x squared. Okay. All right, let's do one more. What number are we on? 7? Okay, so let's look here. So let's take the numbers first. I have a 30, a 25, and a 15. So the number that goes evenly into 30, 25, and 15 is going to be a 5. I have an x squared, I have an x and I have an x. So the only variables they have in common is going to be the x. And my smallest exponent is going to be an x. Okay. My y here, I have a y squared, a y, but this last term is missing the y variable. So I do not have a y as a greatest common factor. Okay. So that y will not be a greatest common factor. So my greatest common factor is going to be a 5x, and I'm going to divide each term by 5x. So 5 goes into 30, how many times? 6. X squared over x will leave me with an x, y squared. 25 divided by 5 is a 5, and x over x, so it'll be 5y. And then 15 divided by 5 gives you 3, and x over x leaves you with the x to the 0 power, which is just a 1. Okay, good. So you always check this by multiplying it back out. So 5x times 6x y squared minus 5x times 5y plus 5x times 3. 5 times 6 gives you a 30. X times x gives you an x squared, y squared. 5 times 5 gives you 25. And then 5 times 3 gives you 15. Always make sure that it's what you started with. Okay? So that is greatest common factors. That's what we're going to look at today. Tomorrow we'll look at if you have two terms, if you have binomials. All right, you have a great day.